From our State House studio in Montgomery, I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal. The Alabama Legislature has completed its special legislative session called by Governor Kay Ivey to allocate more than $1 billion in federal COVID relief funds. The Senate took up the bill on the floor today and voted to pass it after some debate and an amendment. Senator Roger Smitherman of Birmingham proposed an amendment to allow applicants for these federal funds to amend their applications to correct mistakes, lest they be disqualified for a technical error. He spoke about the need for this provision on the Senate floor.
This is simply to be able to help many of our small towns where they don't have the capacity of staff to know what to do, and it gives them some advice to help them so that they won't lose the opportunity to get the grant. There were some concerns expressed about whether it would increase the necessary cost for these agencies to do it. And that's why that you see the last line where you see it said has the capacity and the expertise available to do it. If you're in a metropolitan area, you probably have someone there who will address that. But our small towns, they cannot afford that.
I would suggest that what we have in your statement, in your amendment, is it's already been done. In fact, that was done in ARPA 1. Whenever there was difficulty or questions, I know that ADEM helped, assisted, guided entities so that applications could be achieved. And I believe and know that they will continue to do that. I hesitate to put that language, which is already occurring, into statute.
The Senate adopted the amendment and then passed the ARPA funding bill by a vote of 30-3. The bill then went back to the House for concurrence on the changes made in the Senate. The House voted 96-0 with 6 abstentions to pass the bill. That sent the bill to the desk of Governor Kay Ivey, who signed it into law this afternoon. House Speaker Nathaniel Ledbetter commended his members for dealing with the ARPA funds in short order.
So I think, the body did a good day's work, or, a good week's work. She said 5 days. I mean, the Senate and the House working together with the executive branch. I mean, I think it goes to show working together we can do some things that's very important and positive for Alabama, and without question, moving the ARPA funds to where they need to be to help people across the state was a big deal. I mean, I think we appropriated in the right places where it's one-time money, so we knew that. So spending it on wastewater and mental health and nursing homes and hospitals and veterans homes and things of that matter, I think it's a big deal for the state. And I applaud the Senate and the executive branch for everybody working together as well as the House. And I think it was a good day for our state to see how the legislative process works.
Let's review where these federal dollars are going to be spent. For infrastructure, $660 million, including $400 million for water and sewer grants and $225 million for broadband. For public health, $339 million, including $100 million to reimburse hospitals, $40 million each for the Public Education Employees Health Insurance Plan and the State Employees Insurance Board, $23 million for mental health providers, and $20 million for a voluntary clinical trial and research program. For community services, $55 million, including support for food banks, senior services, and long-term housing. There's also $5 million for the Alabama Department of Labor for its expenses in responding to unemployment issues during the pandemic. The Alabama Prison Finance Authority has increased what the state can spend on building a new 4,000 inmate prison in Elmore County. The amount was increased more than $300 million, from $623 million to $975 million. Asked about the increase, Senate General Fund Budget Chairman Greg Albritton pointed to inflation.
That's what inflation does. And it's not, the prisons are a reflection of that. It's a great reflection of that. And I don't mean great and good, I mean great and large. But we're seeing that throughout. Everybody's seeing that, from eggs to cars to gas to everything. I don't know how you deal with inflation. That's the plague that we have upon us. That's been given to us by the feds. That's the greatest gift, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, it's harmful. It's hurting us. It's eating away at our resources. We've got to deal with it.
We'll be right back with tonight's guests.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capitol Journal and link to past episodes on Capitol Journal's Facebook page.
Joining me next is State Senator Chris Elliott from Baldwin County. Senator, thanks for coming on Capitol Journal.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I wanted to have you on because you brought the amendment to this ARPA bill, American Rescue Plan Act funds. Bill has made it through the House, made it through Senate committee yesterday, and you brought an amendment that altered the way the state can spend these water and sewer funds. Can you walk me through what the amendment does?
Yeah, so we've spent a lot of money on water and sewer, or going to here in the near future. $225 million from the first tranche, and then another $400 million or close to it in the second tranche. And what we did in the amendment was simply say that of that $400 million or so, $100 million of it requires a significant match, so that the locals have to have some skin in the game to access that pot of money. So that match is at 35%. And what we're trying to do there is make sure that money goes as far as it can.
Mm-hmm. Well, I remember you had been pretty vocal during the Oversight Committee hearings when Lance LaFleur at ADEM was explaining kind of the first tranche and where all it went. And you said, hey, none of this is going to some of my fast-growing areas, because you represent a very fast-growing area, and I assume a lot of that, they have infrastructure needs, and you're saying, hey, we deserve at least a chance at some of this.
Well, and we have really critical infrastructure needs. Baldwin County adds 8,000 people a year, every single year, and has for the past decade or so. So you can imagine with that many more people coming, they need that water and sewer infrastructure, as well. And I was frustrated with ADEM's administration, if you will, and how they dispersed the money in the first round of ARPA. And I wanted to make sure that some of this money got to the faster growing areas that saw that physical need, if you will, for increased infrastructure. Not just my area, but around the state. And the way we were able to do that, I think, was pretty reasonable, which was saying those areas that can participate, typically those growing areas, will have this pot of money where they can access those funds, but are required to put that match in as well. And so there's still lots of money floating around that does not require a match. The balance in this second round of ARPA is $300 million.
Yeah, right. So I mean, you're only talking about a fourth.
Correct. But it's a significant amount of money. I mean, $100 million is a bunch of money, but it will go further with a match, and I think that you'll see that money get directed. At least that's the hope and the legislative intent. Get directed to those areas that can afford to put up the match and that are truly growing.
Give me an example of an infrastructure need in a growing place. Is it water, sewer? Is it storm? Is it both?
It really is all of the above, right? So it is stormwater, and my colleague Senator Coleman-Madison and I worked on that, getting in the amendment as well. But it really is still drinking water, and it still is sewage, if you will, clean water. Mm-hmm. And so if you look at, let's take Fairhope for example, they've had chronic sewer problems, capacity problems. They've had moratoriums on construction. You have seen water shortages. So all of these things in what is a fast-growing area, a fairly affluent area, but one that is just pedaling as fast as it can to keep up with the growth. And my hope is that these monies help them keep up with that growth. And help them continue to grow in a responsible manner, but also in a way that benefits the rest of the state. Baldwin County, areas like Fairhope and others, really do kick incredible revenues to the state of Alabama. So it's in everyone's interest to help us grow, but to help us grow responsibly.
I found it curious. I mean, the amendment passed unanimously. I wondered if you might have some pushback, maybe from rural parts of the state, but there really wasn't. What's been the feedback on your idea here?
Well, I think, the feedback from the rural folks is, okay, we've still got 3/4 of this money. That's still a bunch that doesn't require any match. It really was a push and pull and a negotiation, but also realizing that this 35% match requires those folks that can put in money to do so. And that's kind of how I explained it to my colleagues, and they were supportive of it.
So I wanted to see if there was any update on the I-10 bridge. I know this issue's just been around, and I'm more just curious if there has been an update, because I haven't really seen much in the news.
Yeah, so the latest has been some disappointing news from the federal level about mega grants and those not coming to our particular project. It's frustrating that the Biden administration has not seen that to be a priority for them. There are still federal funding opportunities that we may be able to participate in, but the number of those opportunities is really starting to dwindle down to one or two.
So it's really a money issue.
It is. It always has been. Now, ALDOT will tell you that they are proceeding, and they are moving ahead with this project, and they are, and that is certainly happening. The question continues to be, if you look at the capital stack, the different funding sources that are made up, there's still about a $500 million hole in that capital stack in order to achieve that. And the interesting thing is going to be from the Governor's Office of Finance Director and from the Department of Transportation, where do you fill that $500 million hole? How do you fill that? And I think that in order to keep the commitments that ALDOT has made to keep these tolls low, not no, but low, they're going to have to increase the amount of public support to the project, which means more state of Alabama tax money going into that project in order to make it successful.
Moving on, so we're going to end the special session today, and we'll restart the regular session on Tuesday. So everything that's kind of been on hold comes back again. Yeah. What are some of the things you're working on? I know that you've been in some of the conversations about high school sports and the Athletic Association. What might we see from you on that front?
Well, you're going to see a slew of bills from me that deal with the Alabama High School Athletic Association, and this is something, my kids are younger and haven't gotten there yet, but both of them are athletes. But I have heard from my constituents and from folks around the state just unbelievable frustration with the administration of the Alabama High School Athletic Association, and different instances where children have been disqualified from play, coaches have been disqualified from play. I mean, you've had umpire shortages, you've had all kinds of problems. So we're going to attempt to help our friends at the Alabama High School Athletic Association with some productive changes that hopefully will get them back on track. One of which is determining eligibility of play for a player prior to the start of play, and then sticking to that eligibility determination, so you don't have this situation where you're playing a game of gotcha when a team makes it to the playoffs, and then you end up not just punishing the child that may be ineligible, but the entire team that's played the whole season. There's entirely too much of that going on, so I think we're gonna look at that. We're gonna look at some of these other cases that have popped up about playing for a team sponsored by the United States of America, if you're lucky enough to do that. And then we're going to look at some club sports. When you look at soccer, high school soccer programs around the state are suffering because anybody that's really competitive in that sport knows that the action's really at the club level, and so they don't play at high school. So you've got a high school athletic association that's almost disincentivizing play at high school because you can't do both, and that's unfortunate. So we're going to work on a bunch of different bills. I would expect to see 6 or 7 different pieces of legislation that deal with that.
We'll be following that. While I've got you, I wanted to ask about this idea of red tape. You heard the governor in her speech say, a big focus on reducing red tape, cutting bureaucratic sort of barriers. This is an issue you've been involved in for some time. What specifically might we see when the legislative session resumes?
So one of the last vestiges, if you will, of democratic control in my mind was this last part of big government is the boards and commissions that are still out there. We have a ton of them. and they're everything from locksmiths to wrestling to some of the most obscure things that you would ever think of, and they all have their own little fiefdoms, if you will. What we're going to try to do is consolidate some of that, not necessarily doing away with the board, but really trying to help them become more efficient. And then once we do that, make sure they're serving really a public purpose. You know, almost 23% of the state's entire workforce falls under the regulatory authority of one of these boards that really does operate under the authority of the state, but without a lot of oversight of the state, some of whom even have these kind of private firms running them. And so my hope is to really consolidate that, work with the governor and her commission to do that, so that we're running that portion of state government as efficiently as possible.
Do you think that could dovetail into workforce development? Because I know that this has been an issue of credentialing. Certain jobs out there require kind of a heavy layer of credentialing, maybe beyond what is necessary. Do you think that could kind of fold in any way?
Yeah, that's a nice way to say, you know, you've got some protectionist type of stuff going on, and I think that's exactly what's happening in some of these areas. And we need to, with unemployment rates as they are, labor participation rates like they are, we really need to work to get more kids involved in that. And those boards can be, I don't know that they necessarily are now, without singling anyone out, as involved, and they should be, as getting more folks out of high school interested in those trades and interested in those particular professions. But with it being as disparate and spread out as it is right now, it's really hard to manage that. Hopefully kind of consolidating some of that will get us not just efficiency there, but it'll get us efficiency in some workforce training as well.
Yeah, almost flipping it on its head from a barrier to, no, we want to get you in, we want to help you.
Exactly.
I think there's going to be a lot more conversation about that. We're out of time. Thank you, Senator, for coming on the show, and we look forward to following these issues.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
We'll be right back.
You're watching Alabama Public Television.
Joining me next is State Senator Linda Coleman-Madison from Birmingham. Senator, thanks for coming on Capitol Journal.
My pleasure.
I wanted to have you on because we're dealing with ARPA in this special session. It's finally complete, but y'all amended the bill in Senate committee. This amendment had to do with localities, their matching funds. I talked to Senator Elliott about that, but also dealing with stormwater. A lot of money going toward water and sewer, but y'all specifically wanted to add this provision about stormwater. Tell me why that was important.
Well, it's particularly important to me. During the budget hearings, the stormwater was an issue that I brought up. We were talking a lot about sanitary sewers and things like that, and drinking water. Well, in the urbanized areas, not just in an urbanized area in Birmingham, I'm from Jefferson County, but whole Jefferson County is impacted by stormwater. I live in an area in Ensley, near Ensley, that they call Village Creek. I've represented that area from City Council on. And we've gone through a lot of changes where we've had the Army Corps of Engineers to come in and relocate whole communities and families. We're still dealing with trying to repurpose that properties in those areas, but we still have a lot of flooding in spite of the fact that we've moved in a lot of families. That area, Village Creek, goes about 25 miles, so all along there everything is impacted by it. Here recently, the 100-year flood is happening more often now, and so we've had to relocate people again. The roads are flooded. This was just last week. The roads in Ensley, Avenue W was flooded, and it's like a little lake where cars get stalled. We've had businesses in the Woodlawn area. You have the areas in Homewood, Vestavia is flooded. Along Highway 31, that whole area gets flooded. The businesses, they keep coming back.
So some of this money can go toward big infrastructure projects that help deal with that flooding.
Exactly. And the good thing about it is that it provides some matching funds. They can apply for matching funds. There are cities that have abilities, but a lot of cities just need that little extra help. It's too big of a project for any one city, and it's like infrastructure because it's all connected. Water flows down, find its lowest point, but it's going to impact everything that's downstream. So you have to approach it from a county-wide standpoint where everybody puts in. And of course, if all the cities and counties together would work together, use this money that we are putting in place right now to maximize and come up with a plan, engineering plan to deal with that holistically, maybe we can get something done and make an impact. Right now, it just seems like it's an impossible, feat to accomplish.
Well, we'll be following that because it's finally done, and I'm curious what happens with the money. Switching gears real quick, I know that you've been working on legislation dealing with pardons and paroles and creating a day center similar to the men's facility for women there in Thomasville. Are we going to see this bill drop soon?
Yes, we are. Just as soon as, Monday it starts regular session, so that bill will be dropped Monday. We have one women's facility at Tutwiler. All of the women are down there. But we have a lot of facilities for men and opportunities for job training and things of that nature. We don't have that for the women. And so this would provide a facility similar to what we have for the men so that they can get training. And of course, the women's facility is a whole lot different from the men. But we are about reuniting those mothers with children. We're about reintegrating them back into society. But they need something to serve as an interim before they are released so that they will have the opportunity. This facility would provide that space and housing for them.
And it's all about, like you said, getting back into society, having a job,
right.
And a lot of that is to reduce recidivism. I was talking to Cam Ward, and he was mentioning that if they do have a job and they go back, it's a lot less likely that they end up back in prison.
Right. It's so hard, when you come out, you're having to start from scratch. You're trying to deal with connecting with your family. You got to go out and try to find a job. And of course, the public is not as sensitive to people who. Everybody makes mistakes. We don't. As I said, he that is without sin cast the first stone. There's none of us that can say that. So we want to try to give these people an opportunity. Women in particular, when you look at situations like that, is usually something that has happened within the family. Sometimes it's domestic violence and things of that nature you just can't take anymore. But there are families and children that are attached to this. And for the most part, when women I have seen, when they come out and they have a job and they are given opportunities and training, they don't go back. That's a huge impact on the children that they are raising, and them serving as a role model. So you don't want this cycle to be repeated. You want them to say, yes, I made a mistake, changed my life. You have an option. You don't have to go that route. So
have you talked with your colleagues? Have you gotten any feedback about support for this bill?
Yes, I have talked to some of them because they realize that this is something that really, in all fairness, is something the state should have done a long time ago. This is just a great time. And I have to give kudos to the federal government. Sometimes we don't do that. But we are able to do a lot of the things that we have with the ARPA money, the funds that have been coming. All of this really is a result, and of course it's taxpayers' dollars, but all of this is a result of those federal dollars coming down that we are now able to do some of these things. And so I applaud the Department of Pardons and Parole that we are doing this and moving forward with this facility for the women.
While I've got you, I wanted to ask about your voting rights legislation, restoring voting rights. If I recall, you got it through the Senate last time, but it maybe ran out of time before it got to the House. Are you bringing it again?
Bringing it again. This is the third time. The third time is a charm. This is a bipartisan bill. Some of my colleagues across the aisle was not in favor of it. I know, and I have to again give credit to Senator Gavan because he worked tirelessly. I told him, I said, you worked just as hard on this bill as I did.
So explain again what it does.
Basically, and we are talking about people who are already out of prison.
So they've served their sentence.
They have served their sentence. They are out. There are certain requirements that they have to pay back, fines or fees or whatever. All of that is in there. But there are some people, there's a provision for some people who do not have the ability to pay. You have indigent people. So one of the things that was added into this, and this was brought primarily by the faith-based community, that we add some component of community service. There are a lot of them that are out there that are willing to help us. So now it's on this three-legged stool with the state, the pardons and parole, those people that are outside the advocacy group, the faith-based community. It's a three-legged stool that we all support those people that are coming out to help them get their voting rights back. There are certain requirements, and right now in the state of Alabama, if you want to get your rights back, you have to fill out an application, go through
there's
that.
a process.
There's a process, and you have to know, be keeping up with whatever fines or fees or anything else that you have not paid. They don't know. They're busy trying to get on with their lives. Most of them are trying to get a job. But the Pardons and Parole knows exactly what you owe, whether you have met this, and so they have agreed, we work with them on this, they have agreed that they will do all the notification, and once that person has completed whatever process that they have to complete, they will notify the voter registrars in the county that they were registered in. You have to have been a registered voter, otherwise you have to go through the whole process to put their name back on the roll. But it shortens the process, it eliminates them having to make application. The Pardons and Parole has agreed to keep up with the record. It provides a caveat for people who do not have the ability to pay to do community service. And we just think that it's great because, again, it's people who are already out trying to get their lives together, to give them a sense of dignity, to get back into the process of being a full-fledged citizen.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll be following that bill, and I appreciate you bringing it up. We're out of time, but I appreciate you coming on, and we'll talk again soon.
Good. Look forward.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capitol Journal and link to past episodes on Capitol Journal's Facebook page.
That's our show for tonight. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow night at 7:30 for our weekend review. For our Capitol Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.